Welcome to the D.E.A.D podcast, where I discuss all things spooky and weird. I'm Desi, and today I'll be talking about the USS Lexington. Let's get started. Hey everyone, how is everyone tonight? So tonight's episode is we are going to be talking about a haunted ship that's actually a haunted military ship that's actually located right here where I live. So I'm excited to talk about that tonight, and I hope y'all enjoy that. I also wanted to give a little shout out to a podcast that I've really been enjoying lately, and it's called the Haunted Moonlight Podcast. I've listened to like all of her episodes and I've loved them. Her newest episode was so good. It was about her grandma's haunted house. So y'all should definitely go check that out and give her a listen and give her a follow on Instagram too. Oh, I am drinking tonight. I think a couple episodes ago, I was drinking a beer from the Nueces Brewing Company, which is actually local to me, and so I'm just having another one of those because I bought a 6 pack of those. So I'm drinking another one. And my spooky shirt for tonight, it has Michael Myers on it. It's purple, has Michael Myers, and it says John Carpenter's Halloween on the side, and at the bottom it says, "Everyone is entitled to a good scare." So that's the spooky shirt I'm wearing tonight, and I love it. Okay, so like I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about a local haunted ship, supposedly, that's here where I live. And it's a old military ship, and that's been stationed here for a long time. So that's what we're going to be talking about. The USS Lexington is located in Corpus Christi, Texas, also known locally as the Blue Ghost, is a historic aircraft carrier that served in World War II and Vietnam. Today it operates as a museum and is a popular tourist attraction. It is rumored to be one of the most haunted places in Texas. Let's rewind to the beginning of how the ship came to be here in Corpus and its life before. The World War II aircraft carrier was one of the oldest working carriers in the United States when it was decommissioned in 1991. Commissioned in 1943, she set records. She set more records than any other Essex-class carrier in the history of naval aviation. The ship was the oldest working carrier in the United States Navy when decommissioned in 1991. An Essex-class carrier, the Lexington was originally named the USS Cabot. During World War II, final construction was being completed at Massachusetts' Fore River Shipyard when word was received that the original carrier, named USS Lexington CV-2, had been sunk in the Coral Sea. The new carrier's name was changed to Lexington in its honor and put into service in 1943, headed for the Pacific. Unfortunately, her maiden voyage could not avoid tragedy, and her first casualty was 1939 Heisman Trophy winner Niall Kinnock, who was training in flight when his plane careened into the sea. After training maneuvers and a shakedown cruise, the carrier joined the Fifth Fleet at Pearl Harbor. The fleet was established on April 26, 1944, and was a Central Pacific force. During World War II, the carrier participated in nearly every major operation in the Pacific theater and spent a total of 21 months in combat. She aided raids on Tarawa, Wake Island, and the Marshall Islands. In December, Lexington aided in Kwajalein raid, where her planes sank a cargo ship, damaged Japanese cruisers, and downed 30 fighters. Her plane destroyed 372 enemy aircraft in the air and 475 more on the ground. She sank or destroyed 300,000 tons of enemy cargo and damaged an additional 600,000 tons. The ship's guns shot down 15 planes and assisted in downing 5 more, but the Japanese hit her with a torpedo, killing 9 sailors, and limped her back to Pearl Harbor. The Japanese thought more of their aim, though, and listed the ship as sunk. She returned to service in 1944, in time to participate in several attacks on Japanese placements in the Central Pacific. She aided attacks in Hollandia and Truk in April and survived heavy counter attacks entirely untouched, while her defending fighters downed 17 more enemy planes. But despite not being struck by a single bomb, the Japanese again listed her as sunk in battle. In fact, it was these numerous erroneous reports of her sinking that eventually led Japanese propagandists to label her the Blue Ghost. A few months later, Lexington went on to serve in the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The battle devastated Japanese air strength, with the Allied force downing 300 Japanese planes in a single day. Over the following months, USS Lexington assisted in numerous missions across the Pacific before being given her most important assignment yet, Leyte Gulf. The Battle of Leyte Gulf is said to be the largest naval battle in World War II. Under constant attack from Japanese forces, Lexington's crew sank a battleship and 3 aircraft carriers. After winning the pivotal battle, USS Lexington went on to face weaker Japanese defenses throughout the remainder of the war. As Axis morale ran as low as their supplies, even after the war ended, USS Lexington remained stationed in the Pacific to run air patrols around Japan. Though she did not serve actively in the Korean War, she participated in exercises, practice maneuvers, and search and rescue operations throughout the 1950s. When the bells of war tolled once again in Vietnam, USS Lexington was called back to service as a training carrier. Even after the Vietnam War ended, Lexington continued to function as a training carrier for years afterwards. She ended up the last Essex-class carrier in service after USS Oriskany was decommissioned in 1976, and she was later the first ship in the U.S. Navy to have women crew members stationed aboard in 1980. Now that's pretty cool. I didn't even know that. It wasn't until 1991 that Lexington was finally decommissioned. Rather than send her to the scrapyard, the U.S. Navy donated her to the city of Corpus Christi to be refitted as a museum ship just off the beach. It has sat in the same place at the beaches of Corpus Christi ever since, greeting crowds of tourists and history buffs year after year. Sometime into her life as a museum, USS Lexington began collecting stories of eerie happenings on board. Soon after, the carrier became the talk of paranormal enthusiasts across Texas. There is a reason why people have called the Lexington Museum on the Bay one of the most haunted places in Texas. There are things that cannot be explained on the decommissioned World War II aircraft carrier, including ghostly touches and shadowy figures roaming the decks. The bulk of the paranormal activity on board is attributed to the restless ghost of an engine room operator who was killed on board during one of the many battles that the ship participated in. However, this is by no means the only spirit that is lurking aboard the USS Lexington. During World War II, there were several crew members who lost their lives when the vessel came under attack. Visitors to the ship, as well as some of the employees, have described seeing apparitions, hearing doors slam, and seeing lights go on and off all by themselves. It is also fairly common to encounter random, unexplained cold spots at various points on aboard the ship. Charles Rusty Rustle, director of operations and exhibits, said the museum receives hundreds of reports of supernatural activity each year. Among the most famous sightings are a sailor dressed in uniform helping lost guests find their way back to the deck, and a sailor in the engine room giving a lecture on how the turbines work before vanishing into thin air. There are too many accounts that there has to be something to it, said Steve Banta, the museum's executive director. I've always been skeptic, but there's some things I've seen you just can't explain. Rustel said he has experienced several supernatural occurrences during his 26 years of working on the ship. One of the best ghost stories involved losing 6 pen caps over the course of 5 weeks. I always use a ballpoint pen, and over the course of a few weeks, I lost about 6 pen caps off my desk. He said, the day I lost the 6th pen cap, I turned over my entire office looking for them. My office was spotless by the time I was through, and I never found them. It wasn't until I returned to my office the next morning that I found all 6 pen caps laying side by side right in front of my computer keyboard. Bristol said no one has ever been hurt by the ghost on the ship. If anything, all of the occurrences have been playful, not menacing. Renee Moreda, the museum's education coordinator, said officials have heard from security officers who heard running in the hangar bay around 3 a.m. The damage control officer said he didn't see anything on the security cameras and went to see what the noise was coming from, he said. That was when he witnessed shadow figures running in chaos. The officer never came back. I guess he was too scared. Bill Miller, volunteer and paranormal tour guide at the Lexington, said he believes what officers are witnessing at night are sailors running for cover after a torpedo attack hit the ship in Hangar Bay 3. They're constantly doing the same thing over and over again, maintaining the ship. He said of the ghosts he suspects roamed the ship. This was their home, and they don't want to go anywhere else. One of the most famous hauntings of the USS Lexington focuses around her engine room. Many tourists have remarked to the museum proprietors about the wonderful informative tour guide they encountered in the engine room, complete with an era-specific sailor's uniform. While visitors often admire the knowledge and friendliness of Charlie, the engine room tour guide, there is no such tour guide by that name, nor is there a guide specifically for the engine room. Regardless, many people still today report encounters with the helpful and informative Charlie, who is far from the only ghost reported to be staying on board the ship. Others have reported sounds that they figured are residual events from the ship's life in wartime, including loud sprinting footsteps darting across lower decks, sometimes coupled with strange shadow figures darting through the halls. Could these be spectral soldiers rushing to man their battle stations? Others still have encountered disembodied voices and the sounds of distant gunfire without explanation. Smells of cooking food have been reported from the old galley long after the last meal was cooked there, and unexplained crashes and bangs are often heard, as if the ship were still battling rough seas. Perhaps a former ship cook is still wrestling with his rocking and swaying kitchen from the afterlife. So many people have experienced possible paranormal happenings on the ship that some now visit just for the chance to see something spooky happen on one of the decks. The ship also hosts a haunted house regularly, named The Haunting of the Blue Ghost. Paranormal tours and overnight paranormal investigations are also hosted for those interested and brave enough to spend a night amongst the seafaring spirits. USS Lexington has also been featured in numerous pieces of paranormal media, most famously an episode of Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters. So though she once gained the moniker of Blue Ghost from her wartime survival capabilities, it seems the USS Lexington has a few more ghosts, expanding her reputation still today. There are many real ghost stories of the USS Lexington. The following represents some of the haunted tales that have circulated on the massive water vessel. The first one: several soldiers have been killed on this boat. The most massive amount of death that occurred at once happened when an actual plane crashed into the ship. Many individuals have claimed that they have seen an apparition on the ship that appears to be a man from the Second World War era. When individuals see this apparition, they find that it quickly seems to fade out. The second one: at one point, a storm occurred in the area where this haunted ship is stationed, and an employee stated that he could hear screams. As lightning flashed across the sky, he was able to capture a visual of several men running across the deck area. The third one: In certain areas of the USS Lexington, such as in the switch room, many individuals have felt a high level of discomfort. In some cases, these individuals have fallen ill. One of the people this happened to was Donna from the Taps, or Ghost Hunters show. The fourth one, in the engine room of the USS Lexington, many individuals have indicated that they have heard screams. These screams are both of men and women. This is the room that was hit the hardest when the Japanese plane wrecked into the haunted ship. A great number of people died in this room when this tragic accident occurred. Another eerie tale is that of a nurse who worked on the USS Lexington during World War II. According to legend, she fell in love with a sailor who was killed in battle and now haunts the ship searching for him. Some people have even claimed to see her ghost crying and holding a baby, leading many to believe that she was pregnant. Okay, so I ended up finding this story on Reddit about this person's personal experience on the Lexington. So I wanted to read that for y'all. Of course, I don't know if it's true or not, but this is just this person's account. I actually had a haunting experience on the Lexington as a Boy Scout. So this was way back when I was a kid in the early 90s. I was a Boy Scout. We had the opportunity to travel down to Corpus Christi and visit the Lexington, and then to get to stay on the ship overnight in the same bunk racks that the sailors slept in. It was a really cool experience being able to sleep there and see what it felt like. At night, we were given a VIP tour of the ship. The only people supposed to be on the ship was our scout group, the tour guide, and a security guard. While on the flight deck, the security guard mentioned that a lot of people had witnessed a white orb hovering around the fantail and stern of the ship. We were given time to explore the deck on our own in pairs and view all the airplanes on display. Lights were on the deck, so it wasn't too pitch dark. I really thought I was going to see an orb or something, but left the deck disappointed. We weren't into the conning tower, and all the mannequins were in there with period clothing and seemed really spooky. Around this time, while we were looking at things, it got very cold in the tower. All of a sudden, we heard what sounded like footsteps of people running down the halls and down the stairwells of the ship, followed by the loud bang of a bulkhead door closing. Our scoutmaster thought some of us had run off and played a prank, but we were all accounted for. The tour guide even radioed the security guard, but he was at his post in the hangar by the entrance, so there was no one unaccounted for. Frankly, it spooked us all to death, and through the rest of the tour, we kept looking over our backs. That night in the bunks was especially scary. A few times I woke up in the middle of the night and could have sworn to hear whispering of people just outside my bunk curtain and the walking of footsteps. All in all, it was still really fun to learn about the ship and all its history. If you ever get the chance to visit her, she's incredibly well preserved. So that is the end of his story that I found on Reddit. So I've never been to Lexington. I've been wanting to go, and especially during like right now, they do like the haunted ghost tour. So I wish I would have done it before I did the episode, but I haven't. I really want to go and check it out because I think that would be cool. I think I've heard of the story of Charlie like being there giving a guide and then them realizing nope, no one's there giving guides. So that's super creepy. But yeah, I just think it's cool that this, haunted ghost ship is like right here where I live. And it's really pretty down there. It's this huge ship. It's awesome. Has anyone ever visited the Lexington here? What was your experience? And if not, would you come visit and go on a tour, go on a night tour, do paranormal investigation? I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know. So that brings me to the end of this episode. Thanks for listening to the D.E.A.D podcast. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the D.E.A.D podcast. Also, feel free to send in your stories, episode suggestions, or feedback at the deadpodcast1 at gmail.com or send me a DM on Instagram. I always read those, so feel free to DM me over there. If you enjoyed this show, please rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you are listening on. I would greatly appreciate it. And be sure to come back next week for my next episode.